Hi there, musitrature recaps here. Today, I'm explaining a movie called Julia X. The movie kicks off with a young and attractive woman named Julia, who turns to online platforms to find potential dates due to her busy life. She connects with a man through a dating app and decides to meet him in a cafe, hoping to get to know him better. During their coffee meetup, things take an unsettling turn when Julia briefly excuses herself to visit the restroom. The man follows her and makes advances, attempting to get physically close. At first, Julia hesitates, given their limited acquaintance. However, she eventually lets herself be carried away by the allure of the moment. But it's revealed that this scenario is all in Julia's vivid imagination as she contemplates the possible course of events. In reality, she isn't ready for such a daring move and promptly ends the date, bidding farewell to the mysterious man. Julia heads back to her car, calling her sister to let her know she'll be home soon. However, as she gets into her vehicle, she's unexpectedly attacked by the man she had met at the cafe. It becomes clear that he's a criminal who has been operating in the city for several months, using dating apps to lure women into his trap. Subsequently, the police discover the lifeless bodies of the criminal's victims and launch a comprehensive effort to track him down. The man who has Julia captive places a noose around her neck and compels her to obey his every command. Fearing the consequences of defiance, Julia reluctantly agrees to go along with him, heading towards an uncertain and potentially dangerous destination. Upon arriving at his hideout, the stranger restrains Julia by tying her hands and suspends her from a hook, treating her like helpless prey awaiting her grim fate. He briefly departs to attend to personal grooming, leaving Julia alone. Monitoring her via security cameras, he drowns out his surroundings with music from his headphones, seeking a moment of relaxation. Seizing the opportunity while he's distracted, Julia manages to free herself from the hook. She stumbles upon a mobile phone concealed in a raincoat left on a nearby vehicle's hood. A few minutes later, the stranger realizes Julia's absence and embarks on a search. Julia seeks refuge in a garage and attempts to call the police using the discovered phone. However, the stranger swiftly tracks her down among the old cars. Recapturing his victim, he deems her deserving of punishment for her escape attempt. He relocates Julia to the back of a pickup truck, where he employs a heated branding iron to sear her flesh, leaving a distinct X as his signature mark on her body. The intense pain shocks Julia, causing her to lose consciousness. This temporary reprieve benefits the stranger, as he transfers the unconscious Julia into a van without encountering resistance, subsequently restraining her with handcuffs. As he prepares to transport his captive, a sudden ringing from Julia's mobile phone, which had slipped from her pocket, captures his attention. The stranger decides to make an unexpected stop and harshly punishes Julia for her perceived misbehavior. Later, Julia discovers another girl in the back of the van. She calls out to the girl, only to realize that the second victim has succumbed to an eternal slumber. At some point, the criminal arrives at a desolate wasteland to dispose of the previous victim's lifeless body. This victim, like Julia, bears a branding with the letter W. The man digs a pit filled with rainwater and proceeds to lay the girl to rest. Strangely, he shows a twisted form of affection, planting a kiss on the girl's lips before saying goodbye. Meanwhile, Julia spots the key to her handcuffs, which the stranger inadvertently left nearby. Freeing herself, she fiercely resists the criminal. Armed with a shovel, she makes a break for it. The man seizes the opportunity, clutching the chain, and relentlessly pursues her. Julia sprints across a field, desperate to shake off her relentless pursuer, and stumbles upon an old, abandoned house. Breaking a window, she attempts to take refuge inside. However, the man is undeterred and forces his way in. As Julia barricades herself in one of the rooms, she realizes that she's trapped. With the criminal relentlessly pursuing her, he forcefully breaks through the door and recaptures her. He strikes her in the face and attempts to assert control, but Julia refuses to succumb to his deranged advances. She remains resolute and determined not to yield to his madness. At a certain moment, Julia springs from her seat and delivers a knee to the criminal, vaulting out of a window. The man relishes this dangerous game, finding excitement and a heightened desire to persist in the chase. Allowing the girl a head start, the criminal continues his relentless pursuit, akin to a cornered animal. Upon reaching the shore of a small lake, Julia seizes a boat and sets sail, putting as much distance between herself and the criminal as possible. The man follows at his own pace, confident that she can't escape him. Eventually, Julia realizes that the lake isn't deep, prompting her to leap out of the boat to navigate through the water swiftly, leaving no traces. The man, originally from the cafe, locates a boat and comes to terms with the fact that he's momentarily lost his prey. He briefly removes his headphones, attempting to tune into his surroundings, then promptly resumes listening to his favorite music. In the meantime, Julia navigates swamps and forests, spotting a brick building on her path. She hurries toward it. The man notices her muddy footprints and persistently pursues her, believing she's an easy catch. Julia ascends to the second floor, searching for items she can use for self-defense. After discovering a can of gasoline and a couple of flares, she rushes outside and sets fire to a pole. This serves as both a signal to locals and a distraction for the criminal, who continues to explore each room, surprised by the girl's resourcefulness. Julia also stumbles upon a spray can of paint and a small package. In the same room, as the man enters, the girl strikes him with a piece of metal pipe and then quickly covers his head with a bag, putting the criminal to sleep. Julia pulls the unconscious man out onto the street just as a black car pulls up to the abandoned building. It's Jessica, Julia's sister, who has found her and is ready to help load the man into the trunk. As it turns out, the sisters aren't innocent victims but rather skilled fighters who deliberately tracked down this man. Julia didn't anticipate the hunt being so challenging, but she's pleased with herself nonetheless. Together, the sisters stuff the cafe stranger into the trunk and head home. After dragging the criminal into their house, they don't miss the opportunity to kick him and hit him in the head with a tire iron when he regains consciousness. Later, the criminal wakes up to find himself chained to the basement wall by his neck. The strange part is that eerie mannequins of a man and a woman are sitting next to him, invoking fear and horror. Realizing that escape isn't an option, the stranger reluctantly agrees to Julia's terms, understanding that he'll now have to play by her rules. Meanwhile, Jessica helps her sister tend to the branded wound and reveals that she's found another victim. Julia asks her younger sister not to be overly harsh, as not every man who sends explicit photos is a criminal deserving of punishment. Jessica is furious that Julia won't allow her to take the life of the criminal. She believes that she's grown up and should punish anyone with wicked intentions. Their behavior is rooted in their upbringing, having been raised by a very abusive father who subjected his wife and daughters to his cruelty. He would humiliate their mother and subjected Julia to his abuse, leading her to become protective of her younger sister, Jessica. Despite the passing years, Julia's protectiveness over Jessica hasn't waned. While Jessica wants to prove her maturity, Julia asks her to hold back. Jessica then goes down to the basement, leaving the key to the collar for the criminal to escape. When he frees himself and heads upstairs, Julia surprises him by stabbing him in the back and attacking with a hammer. The man, though struggling, finds himself oddly excited by this cat-and-mouse game. As he descends into the basement after Julia, he realizes she's not acting alone but has an accomplice. This further intrigues the cafe stranger, who anticipates more thrilling and heated encounters. Julia remains committed to protecting her sister. She uses a spray can to blind the criminal temporarily and then hurries upstairs to reassure Jessica. While the criminal continues to pursue the sisters, he shoves Jessica away, causing her to tumble down the stairs and back into the basement. Julia, in the kitchen, grabs the first object at hand. When the man enters the room, she strikes him with a frying pan, ensuring her sister is safe and knocking out the criminal. A few minutes later, the man awakens in agonizing pain as Julia douses his wounds with strong alcohol. He's securely bound with barbed wire, rendering him immobile and at the mercy of the girls. Once Julia departs, Jessica attempts to seduce the captive, revealing her hidden desires. However, the older sister forbids any games with the victim and insists they leave him be. Jessica is eager to finish off the criminal quickly so she can move on to the next man, but Julia advises against rushing, as she's exhausted and needs some rest. Jessica is determined to prove her independence and maturity. She adopts an alluring persona and seeks assistance from a mechanic neighbor, Sam, who's working on a red Mustang. She fabricates a story about her motorcycle breaking down and needing a helping hand, all while luring Sam into adult games and blindfolding the unsuspecting mechanic. Soon, she brings him to the house and deceitfully ties him up, placing him in front of the captive criminal. When Sam hears the voice of the second man, he's taken aback, as he wasn't prepared for these unexpected developments. He's bewildered that he's not the sole man in the house and certainly not ready for any sort of threesome games. The criminal tries to reassure the naive Sam, hinting that the worst is yet to come and advising him not to scream or call for help. Sam remains under the misconception that this is all part of a three-way romantic encounter, but he'll soon realize just how wrong he is. Later on, Julia wakes up and heads down to the kitchen, where she discovers a new addition to their prisoners. She's quite displeased with Jessica's actions and implores her younger sister to cease her behavior. Jessica is determined to prove her independence and requests an opportunity to do so. Julia suggests they deal with Sam by using nails and a hammer. Jessica hesitates, and the captor taunts her, drawing her attention. Despite her injuries, Jessica drives nails into the man from the cafe's legs, then locates a stun gun, subjecting both captives to pain and suffering. Julia, weary of the situation, takes a break in the bathroom. Meanwhile, Jessica smashes a bottle over the criminal's head before retiring to her bedroom. The man from the cafe later regains consciousness and realizes he has wire cutters at his disposal. He uses the tool to free himself and removes Sam's restraints, allowing the mechanic to witness the distressing events unfolding around him. Having tended to their wounds, the criminal is primed to resume the macabre game. He first targets Julia in the bathroom, attempting to strangle her, but Jessica intervenes. At times, it appears to the sisters that the criminal may have escaped, but he revels in pursuing them relentlessly and refuses to leave the house under any circumstances. Jessica encounters the criminal and lures him into her bedroom, concealing herself under the bed with a pair of scissors at the ready. Meanwhile, Julia discovers a sledgehammer in the garage and sets Sam free so he can escape. Protecting her younger sister, she engages in another confrontation with the criminal. During the scuffle, Julia and the man from the cafe exchange pleasantries and compliments. They are still relative strangers, so they continue getting to know each other by discussing their preferences in music, food, and movies. Their passionate rendezvous, complete with self-inflicted pain and violence, gets interrupted by Jessica's occasional interventions as she assists her older sister. Julia, a determined and strong-willed young woman, eventually prevails in the battle against the criminal, dragging him back into the house. Jessica embraces her sister but then swiftly thrusts the scissors into her. The man watches this with delight and confesses that it's the best date he's ever been on. Jessica has decided to eliminate her older sister once and for all, feeling that she's mature enough to do so. Following Julia, she finishes off the criminal. Later on, Jessica, acting more ruthlessly than any criminal, disposes of the man's body and sets the house ablaze. Sometime after these events, the girl resumes her online dating. When meeting another man at a cafe, she introduces herself as Julia Lai and hints at intimacy. As soon as the couple retreats to the restroom, and the dark-skinned stranger engages in inappropriate behavior, Jessica takes his life. According to her, after what she considers a successful date, she exits the cafe, plays the music of the now-deceased criminal, and drives off into the distance in the mechanic's red Mustang, and here the movie ends. Thank you for watching.